Hey guys, tonight we're going to slide open the paper doors of a quiet samurai home, just as the first sliver of sunlight slips across the tatami mats. The floor is cool beneath your feet, the air smells faintly of cypress and miso, and somewhere in the next room, someone is already boiling water over a charcoal fire. A wooden ladle dips, a cloth rustles. Outside, a crow calls once, then disappears into the morning mist. You've woken up in 17th century Japan, and you're expected to act like a samurai. The only problem is you're starving, and your stomach is about to learn that breakfast here is both a sacred ritual and a culinary mystery. Between salted fish, fermented beans, and soup that feels like a warm hug in a bowl, you're in for a journey that's equal parts nourishing and philosophical. Also, spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this lifestyle without a serious crash course in discipline, chopsticks, and emotional restraint. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake, leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. I love seeing how far this sleepy little podcast travels. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up before the sun is fully risen, before the day has found its voice. There's a breath of cold air moving along the floorboards, finding your ankles, reminding you that even a warrior's house can be drafty. You sit up on your futon, still wrapped in your yukata, blinking sleep from your eyes. Somewhere far off, a bamboo fountain ticks, filling and tipping with a wooden clack every few seconds. It keeps time more gently than any clock ever could. Everything in your room is in its place. Minimalism isn't a design trend here. It's a necessity, a discipline, a reflection of the mind. There's no clutter, just your sword resting in its stand, a folded garment for the day, a small calligraphy scroll hanging on the wall with a single brush stroke of wisdom. Fall 7 times, rise 8. As you move through the house, the wooden hallway creaks softly beneath your feet. Shoji screens slide quietly as you pass, revealing the faint glow of morning. No harsh alarms, no buzzing screens, no rushing traffic. Just the rhythm of waking life in a samurai's household. Measured, calm, precise. You step outside for a breath of air. The garden is silent except for a koi fish rippling the pond and a light wind rustling the maple leaves. You bow slightly toward the morning, as if acknowledging that yes, the world has survived the night again. Back inside, breakfast is quietly being prepared. But you don't rush to it. First comes the body, then the blade. You kneel before your swords and bow. Even if you're not using them today, you acknowledge their presence. You run your fingers along the saya, the lacquered scabbard, then check the katana's edge for dust, for imperfections. Not out of fear, but respect. This is part of your morning ritual, an act of mindfulness disguised as maintenance. Then a few light stretches, arms above your head, neck tilted side to side. Your knees creak, your shoulders pop. It's not glamorous, but it's necessary. You might not be dueling today, but you might have to sit in Caesar for 3 hours listening to a local lord's poetry, which is arguably more punishing. Finally, the food arrives. A small tray, wooden, clean, beautiful in its simplicity. And on it, the essence of a samurai morning. First, a bowl of white rice, perfectly steamed, each grain distinct and shining like tiny pearls. No butter, no salt, no soy sauce splashed carelessly on top. Just rice, the cornerstone of every meal, the silent partner in your culinary life. Next to it, a bowl of miso soup, gentle steam curling upward like a beckoning finger. The scent is rich and earthy. Tofu cubes float lazily beside thinly sliced scallions and seaweed. The first sip is salty, yes, but also warm in a way that touches your bones. There's grilled fish, probably a slice of mackerel or dried sardine, carefully prepared over charcoal. Its skin is crisp, the flesh tender, the bones a gentle warning to eat slowly. Then comes the pickled plum, the umeboshi, a single red jewel of extreme flavour. You eye it with suspicion. One bite and your mouth tightens like a startled cat. It's sharp, sour and intense, but it also wakes you up more effectively than a gallon of espresso. You've never respected fruit this much before. Sometimes there's a serving of natto, fermented soybeans that smell like your dojo after a long summer session. They're stringy, sticky, and shockingly nutritious. You mix them into the rice cautiously, because while your body may benefit, your nose is filing a formal complaint. And finally, tea. Matcha. Whisk to froth. Bitter as discipline itself. You cradle the ceramic cup in both hands, letting the warmth seep into your fingers. You take a slow sip and feel the morning settle into you, green and grassy and full of promise. You do not speak during the meal. No small talk, no idle chatter. Meals are sacred. You chew deliberately, with attention. You give thanks, not loudly but internally, with each bite. Gratitude for the rice, for the fish, for the hands that made it all possible. Historians still argue whether samurai breakfast differed by region or whether lower-ranking warriors had access to all these staples daily. Some suggest the pickled plum was reserved for wealthier households. Others say even common soldiers could expect a modest but complete tray if the harvest had been good. One curious theory? That samurai preferred quieter, simpler breakfast to maintain a steady focus throughout the day, less indulgence, more intention. This contrasts sharply with the morning feasts of European knights, who leaned into bread, meat and wine. But here, you aim for equilibrium, not indulgence. You finish your meal, the tray is cleared, you bow once more. There's no feeling of being full, just of being ready. The world waits, and you, now centered, can meet it. The sun hasn't quite spilled over the rooftops yet, but you're already kneeling on the polished wooden floor of the dojo. The air still holds a nip from the night, creeping under your robes, sharp enough to sting, but you don't flinch. You bow slowly, forehead grazing the grain of the floor, and hold the moment. This isn't about hunger, not yet. Before breakfast comes balance. Before food comes focus. Your stomach may protest softly, like a child too polite to demand anything, but your body knows the sequence. In a samurai's life, nourishment doesn't begin with a bowl of rice. It begins with movement, with breath, with presence. You start by stretching, not for sport, but for discipline. Arms lifted skyward, then lowered with control, shoulders rolling in slow circles, neck tilted side to side with the same solemnity you'd reserve for a temple bell. Your knees creak faintly. Your spine clicks into awareness. The floor beneath you isn't just a surface. It's your grounding point, your quiet anchor. The bokken, the wooden sword, waits in the corner, its edge worn smooth by years of practice. You take it in both hands, bow to it, and step into the centre of the room. The walls are still, no spectators, no clapping. Just you, the floor, and the slow echo of breath through your nostrils. You begin your kata, not with a slash or a shout, but with a breath. The first cut slices the air, not violently, but with precision. Your feet shift, just slightly, left forward, weight balanced. Another cut, then another. You're not fighting an enemy. You're training your body to listen. Your movements trace patterns through the air like brush strokes across silk. Each gesture echoes centuries of tradition. You're not improvising. You're remembering, repeating motions passed down teacher to student, generation to generation. Some say this repetition was meditative. Others believe it was a method of embodying loyalty, patience, and humility through sweat and muscle memory. Historians still argue whether every samurai practiced sword work each morning, or if this was a romantic ideal reserved for literature and high-ranking warriors. But even in debate, there's consensus on the value of ritual, that to begin the day with intention, regardless of social class, was a pillar of the samurai spirit. Once the sequence is complete, you return to kneeling. Your heart has steadied, your lungs are full, your mind is quiet. Only now may the rest of the day begin. You wash. Not with a steaming bath or lavender soap, but with water scooped from a ceramic basin. It splashes across your face, cold enough to steal a gasp. You dry yourself with a square cloth folded just so. No waste, no flourish. A willow twig is your toothbrush, dipped in salt, chewed gently until it frays at one end. You scrub your teeth not for fresh breath, but for clarity. Clean mouth, clean words, clean soul. Next comes your attire. Your robes are folded in perfect symmetry, set out the night before. First, the white juban underlayer, then your kimono, brushed free of dust. Every tie, every tuck is deliberate. Samurai did not fumble with sleeves or rush their belts. The very act of dressing was an extension of self-discipline. There's no mirror. You feel your way into readiness. A brief moment to tie your hair back, if you have enough of it, or pat down any rebellious strands. In the mirrorless world of a samurai, how you carry yourself speaks louder than how you look. Dignity doesn't need a reflection. Now, the scent of breakfast finally reaches you. Charcoal smoke curls beneath the sliding doors. A faint trace of miso, a little earthy, a little sea-like, mingles with the sharper note of pickled daikon. A servant's feet pad softly past your room. You follow, the dojo behind you, your stomach now fully awake. In the breakfast space, there's no dining table like you'd find in a modern kitchen. Just a small wooden tray, lacquered to a soft sheen, with compartments that seem too neat for real hunger. On it, a bowl of steamed rice, fluffy and white. A dish of grilled fish, its skin charred golden. A bowl of miso soup with tofu, seaweed, maybe a rogue mushroom or two. And of course the umeboshi, that fierce little pickled plum. You kneel before the tray, bow, press your palms together. You speak quietly, itadakimasu. This simple phrase means I humbly receive. It acknowledges the farmers, the cooks, the animals, the weather, even the unseen spirits that may have influenced the harvest. You don't eat like a king. You eat like someone who knows the weight of every grain. First, a sip of soup. It's warm, grounding, gentle on your empty stomach. You feel it coat your insides like soft cloth. Next, a bite of rice. Slightly sticky, subtly sweet. No sauces, no frills. Just rice. And somehow, it's enough. You chew slowly. You don't speak. This is eating as meditation. A piece of fish now, crispy on the outside, flaking inside. Rich, oily, balanced by the soup's lightness. Then comes the umeboshi. That shocking plum. You hesitate. You always do. But you eat it anyway. Its sourness strikes like a slap, but then fades into clarity. It's not pleasant. It's purposeful. There's a concept you carry with each bite. Harahachibu. Eat until you're 80% full. Not stuffed, not groaning, just satisfied. Enough to function. Enough to move lightly, to remain alert. Even in food, the samurai practiced restraint. Interestingly, some scholars believe that eating modestly each morning trained the samurai to avoid indulgence later in life. Others argue it was purely practical. Lighter breakfast meant sharper minds in the early hours. Still, others suggest the samurai's morning meal was tied to Zen philosophy. The idea that simple, mindful eating was a form of spiritual hygiene. And there are fringe theories too, that specific breakfast ingredients were chosen to match elements of seasonal balance or even fortify certain emotions like courage or calmness. Whether truth or poetic tradition, it makes for a delicious debate. Once finished, you rest your chopsticks on the bowl's rim. You bow again. A second thanks. Not just for the food, but for the chance to eat it with awareness. You rise. The day begins. And yet you carry that breakfast with you. Not in your belly alone, but in your posture, your patience, your presence. The rice arrives before you see it. Not in bowls yet, not even visible from the hallway, but you know it's coming. You can smell it. That soft, warm steam drifting through the air like a blanket you haven't pulled up yet. It's a fragrance so subtle that in another time or place you might not even notice it. But here, in this calm morning within a samurai's home, you do. It smells like earth and water and heat, like memory and labour, like discipline softened into nourishment. A wooden lid is lifted somewhere in the kitchen. A rice paddle moves gently through a clay pot, fluffing, not stirring, the perfectly steamed grains. You hear none of this, but somehow you feel it. It's breakfast time. And this bowl of rice is not just food, it's the spiritual centre of your morning. You settle into place, knees folded under you, back straight, your hands resting lightly in your lap. There's no loud clinking of plates, no scraping of chairs, just the sound of your own breath and the quiet anticipation of what's to come. The tray is set down in front of you without a word. It holds a bowl of rice, a dish of grilled fish, a small bowl of miso soup, a pickled plum, and a few carefully chosen vegetables. Everything is placed deliberately, harmoniously, not for show, but for balance. You pick up the rice bowl with both hands, bow slightly and say aloud, "Itadakimasu." You're not just saying thanks for the food, you're acknowledging everything and everyone who made this bowl possible. The farmers, the cooks, the fire, even the rain. The rice is white, soft and gleaming in the morning light. You take your first bite. It's warm, just the right side of hot. The texture is pillowy, but each grain is still intact, separate. There's no sauce, no seasoning, no oil or butter. But it is not bland. It's subtle. It tastes of clarity. You chew slowly. You listen to the rhythm of your own eating. The grains roll across your tongue with a smooth, gentle sweetness. Each mouthful anchors you deeper into the moment. Nothing is rushing you. There are no distractions, no side conversations, no multitasking. Just this one task. Eat the rice. Be present. Rice in the samurai world wasn't just a dish. It was a currency, quite literally. Samurai were often paid in rice, not coins. The amount they earned was measured in koku, a unit of rice equal to what one man needed to live for a year, about 180 litres. A powerful samurai lord might earn thousands of koku. A lesser retainer might receive just enough to feed his family. Rice wasn't simply part of the meal. It was part of the system. It was wealth. It was survival. Historians still debate how much white rice the average samurai actually ate. Some sources suggest that while high-ranking warriors ate polished rice daily, many lower-tier samurai often mixed it with millet or barley, stretching their supply further. Others believe that white rice, prized for its purity and digestibility, was saved for formal occasions or ritual meals. And then there are the outliers, accounts that claim some households prepared white rice every day, regardless of status, as a point of pride and discipline. Regardless of frequency, rice was always treated with reverence. The process of cooking rice was an art in itself. First, it had to be washed, repeatedly, until the water ran clear. This wasn't just hygiene, it was a form of purification. Then it was soaked to ensure even cooking, then steamed in heavy clay pots over low, steady flames. No timers, no shortcuts, just intuition, attention, and patience. When it came time to serve, it was never scooped carelessly. The shamoji, or rice paddle, was used gently, sliding under the grains, lifting and folding them, preserving their shape and warmth. No pressing, no mashing, just care. Some scholars suggest that the way a household served rice was a subtle reflection of its values. A well-prepared bowl hinted at inner harmony, a sloppy one at disorder. Rice wasn't flashy, but it revealed everything. Back at your tray, you notice something. You're halfway through your bowl and you're not full. You're not even trying to get full, that's not the goal. You're simply eating, slowly, mindfully. The Japanese concept of harahachi bu, to eat until you're 80% full, guides you here. It's not about restriction, it's about restraint, about recognizing that excess leads to imbalance. A side dish rests next to the rice, perhaps a sliver of pickled daikon, or a touch of fermented soybean paste. Just enough to break the monotony, not to distract. You take a bite, then return to the rice. The flavours complement each other, nothing dominates, everything exists in dialogue. Then, a sip of tea. Roasted bancha, probably. Not the expensive matcha used in tea ceremonies, but something humbler. It's earthy, a little smoky, and clears the palate. You rest the cup in both hands and take it slowly, like you're sipping the morning itself. There's something deeply meditative about this moment, about this rice. It reminds you that not all nourishment is about hunger. Some is about remembrance, some about structure, some about simply being still long enough to appreciate what's in front of you. Interestingly, in some households, a portion of rice would be offered at the household altar before the meal began. A tiny bowl placed in front of ancestral tablets, or kamidana, the Shinto shrine. This wasn't superstition, it was continuity, an act of feeding the past while honouring the present. Even the bowls matter. Your rice bowl isn't just a container, it's an extension of the meal itself, carefully shaped, often handmade, designed to fit comfortably in your palm. The inside is glazed for smoothness. The outside, often textured, slightly imperfect, reminding you that beauty isn't found in symmetry but in intention. A fun fringe detail. Some samurai kept personal bowls passed down from fathers or teachers, not because they were expensive, but because they carried memories. A father's last meal, a teacher's quiet blessing. These bowls weren't just used, they were respected. You finish the final bite, not in a hurry, not in ceremony, just naturally. You feel content, not full to bursting, not sleepy, just ready. You set your chopsticks across the top of the bowl, never stuck vertically, which is reserved for funerals. You bow once more and whisper, Gochi susama deshita, thank you for this meal, for the work, for the life, for the moment. You rise. Your day begins, not with adrenaline or coffee, but with a warm belly and a centered mind. And the rice, it lingers, in your breath, in your steps, in your stillness. Because to eat rice like a samurai isn't just to eat. It's to remember who you are, where you come from, and how you begin again, every single morning. The steam still curls from your rice bowl, but now your attention shifts to the dish that sits just beside it. A small, gently chipping ceramic bowl filled with miso soup. From where you sit, the surface appears calm, almost like a warm, shallow pond. But when you lift the bowl closer to your face, the scent tells another story. Earthy, oceanic, faintly smoky, like the breath of a mountain forest after a rain. Miso soup. At first glance, it doesn't seem like much. There's no rich colour, no thick broth, no floating chunks of meat. But once you take that first sip, gently, with both hands, the way you would cradle a secret, you realise it is so much more than a side dish. It's a philosophy in liquid form. The taste is subtle, yet full, salty but round. You find hints of fermented soybean, soft tofu cubes, slivers of green onion, and pieces of wakame seaweed drifting slowly like leaves in a still pond. The flavour doesn't attack your palate, it coaxes it awake. And as you drink, you're also taking in centuries of culinary memory. Miso, the fermented paste at the heart of this soup, wasn't just a pantry staple, it was a pillar of survival in the samurai era. Made from soybeans, salt and rice or barley, it was carefully aged in giant cedar barrels, sometimes for months, sometimes for years. Each region developed its own variation. Some miso was pale and sweet. Some was dark and pungent, with a flavour strong enough to wake a sleepy monk. Historians still debate how widespread miso soup was across all social classes during the Edo period. While elite samurai had regular access to aged, high-quality miso, many poorer households may have used more diluted versions or relied on vegetable-based broths, flavoured with scraps of fermented paste. Even so, the soup remained central, a warm, drinkable foundation to the first meal of the day. You take another sip, and this time you pause. There's something contemplative about it, isn't there? A quiet kind of richness. You can almost taste the time it took to make, weeks of fermentation, the slow magic of bacteria transforming simple ingredients into something deeply alive. Some say miso soup mirrors the samurai mindset. It's simple on the surface, but layered and intentional underneath. It demands patience to make, respect to serve, and attention to fully enjoy. You find small surprises in each sip, a slice of mushroom, a single daikon cube, maybe a bit of yam depending on the season. The broth is never the same twice, and that's the point. This isn't fast food. This is a slow-moving river, one that teaches you to notice. In some regions, dried sardines or bonito flakes were simmered into the dashi broth that formed the base. This created depth, umami, though they didn't call it that yet. Today we think of umami as the fifth taste, but samurai simply called it wholeness. A soup that didn't need to be sweet or spicy to be complete. It just needed to feel right. The bowl is small, it doesn't overflow, this too is intentional. Miso soup isn't meant to fill you up. It's meant to bring balance, to soften the rice, to warm your core, to remind your body that the world is safe, at least for now. And it's not just about the ingredients, it's about how you drink it. You don't use a spoon, you hold the bowl with both hands, bring it to your lips, and sip quietly. There's no slurping, no sloshing, just breath and warmth and flavour. You're not just drinking, you're receiving. There's an old tale of a samurai lord who, after being injured in battle, refused meat or wine, asking instead only for miso soup made the way his mother did it. Thin, smoky, with a slice of taro and no tofu. They say he sipped it slowly, and his pain eased for the first time in days. Whether that's true or not, it tells you something. This soup wasn't just nutrition, it was medicine for the spirit. And when the seasons changed, so did the soup. In winter, it might contain hearty root vegetables to ward off the chill. In spring, young greens like mitsuba or spinach appeared in the bowl. Some are called for lighter versions, even served cold in some cases. Autumn miso often leaned darker, with mushrooms and chestnuts, a sip of the forest before it fell asleep. Sometimes a miso breakfast was the only hot item on a samurai's plate. It gave warmth on cold mornings, revived aching bodies after long marches, and brought a moment of comfort to lives filled with uncertainty. Think of it as armour, but on the inside. You finish your bowl now, slowly. There's no rushing the last sip, no gulping. You savour the final warmth as it moves down your throat. It's not just the end of your soup, it's the start of something else. The quiet strength that carries you through the day. A quirky footnote? Some samurai had favourite bowls, specific vessels for their miso, with textures or glazes they liked to feel in their hands. The relationship between warrior and bowl was intimate, in a way modern diners might find eccentric. But for a culture built on ritual and repetition, even this mattered. The bowl you hold might be rough on the outside, its glaze cracked like old bark. Inside, it's smooth and dark, swirling with the memory of meals past. It has been warmed by miso hundreds of times. It has been carried, cleaned and cared for, and now it holds your attention. As you set it down, gently, you breathe out. There's a reason this soup has remained part of the Japanese breakfast for over 1,000 years. It's not flashy, it's not exciting, but it's steady, reliable, nourishing not only to the body but to something quieter and hard to name. And in the measured rhythm of your morning, sword practice, cleansing, robe folding, rice chewing, it fits perfectly. Because miso soup isn't meant to surprise you, it's meant to center you. It's small, wrinkled and suspiciously red, resting right there in the corner of your breakfast tray like it owns the room. If you didn't know any better, you might think someone accidentally left a dried cherry on your plate. But no, this is no innocent fruit. This is umeboshi, the infamous pickled plum that has struck fear, admiration, and squinty eyes into breakfast eaters for centuries. You stare at it, quietly negotiating. It doesn't blink. It doesn't flinch. It just sits there, silent, powerful, absurdly salty. You pick it up cautiously with your chopsticks, and with the bravery of a foot soldier facing a mountain ogre, you take a bite. Instant regret. Your jaw tightens. Your face involuntarily puckers. For a brief moment, you may be convinced that your brain has short-circuited. The sourness is so intense, it feels like your tongue is trying to hide in your throat. It's like biting into vinegar wrapped in lightning, seasoned with regret and ancient discipline. And then, oddly, you want more. Welcome to the samurai breakfast wake-up call. This isn't your Western fruit cup. This is not melon or strawberries designed to ease you gently into the day. No, the umeboshi is here to shock your taste buds into submission and remind you that life is not always gentle, especially when you carry a sword for a living. Umeboshi has long been part of the traditional Japanese breakfast, and for good reason. Made by salting and sun-drying unripe plums and fermenting them with red shiso leaves, it's a food that demands respect. Its role isn't to please, it's to purify, to cleanse, to sharpen. Samurai carried them on campaigns, tucked into rice balls or stored in cloth pouches. Why? Because these sour little bombs were believed to prevent fatigue, aid digestion, and keep away illness. You weren't just eating a fruit, you were ingesting a defensive strategy. Historians still argue whether the medicinal benefits of umeboshi are as strong as tradition suggests. Some claim its high salt content made it effective in preserving other foods and fighting bacteria. Others point to more symbolic interpretations, that umeboshi was a reminder of resilience and austerity, a test of the warrior's ability to face discomfort without flinching. One quirky fringe belief held that umeboshi could cure hangovers, which might explain why some hungover court officials insisted on having one first thing in the morning. Nothing like a sour slap to restart the soul. But beyond myth and medicine, the umeboshi has culinary wisdom in its corner. Think of your breakfast tray: soft, neutral rice, warm, savoury miso soup, mild tofu, grilled fish that's light and smoky, and then this sharp, jolting contrast. A single, concentrated flavour bomb that makes everything else more vivid by comparison. You pair it with rice cautiously. Now it makes sense. The plainness of the rice tempers the sourness of the plum. Together they achieve balance. It's not that the rice needs seasoning, it's that the umeboshi needs context. One complements the other. In the same way a pause enhances a melody, or silence makes a speech powerful, the umeboshi only works when set against calmness. You chew more slowly now. You're not wincing anymore, just aware. That little fruit did exactly what it was supposed to do. It made you pay attention. No drifting off, no absent-minded bites, just present, focused eating. Very samurai. In some regions, it was custom to place a single umeboshi at the centre of a rice ball, or onigiri. Others placed it directly in the middle of a bowl of white rice, its red hue against the snowy grains resembling the Japanese flag. This wasn't accidental. It was deliberate symbolism, a reminder of tradition, unity, and quiet national pride. There are tales of mothers packing umeboshi into their sons' travel meals, believing it would protect them. A kind of edible talisman, a spoonful of hope wrapped in salt. There's something tender about that gesture, something universal, sending someone off into the world with something that makes their eyes water, but might also keep them safe. You chew slowly, finishing the last bite of plum. Your mouth is still tingling, your saliva glands overachieving, and yet you feel good, awake, ready. The kind of ready that doesn't come from caffeine or adrenaline, but from surviving something small and powerful and weirdly satisfying. You sip your tea to calm your taste buds. The bitterness of roasted bancha now feels sweet in comparison. The rice tastes softer, the miso rounder, The whole meal becomes sharper in focus after the umeboshi's entrance. It's not the main act, but it's the note you remember. An odd little fact. Some samurai actually aged their umeboshi, kept them for years, even decades, believing that older plums carried stronger healing properties. There are stories of plums so prized they were passed down like heirlooms, not because they were still edible, though some claimed they were, but because of what they represented: care, patience, and resilience under pressure. Making umeboshi was often a summer family event. In warmer months, plums were laid out on bamboo mats, turned carefully by hand, watched like sleeping children. Rain during the drying process was considered a disaster, a bad omen, a ruined batch. But if everything went right, the result was a fruit that could last not just weeks or months, but generations. You set your chopsticks down for a moment, reflecting. It's strange, really. Something so small, so sour, so intense, and yet it occupies such a large space in this gentle breakfast. The lesson is almost comically clear. Not everything that's hard to swallow is bad for you. Some things sharpen your senses, wake you up, remind you that resilience is sometimes found not in indulgence, but in that which challenges you and makes you sit up a little straighter. You glance at the tray, the rice is almost gone, the soup bowl is half empty, the fish awaits, but the plum, it's already done its job, and what a job that was. You eye it with cautious curiosity, nestled neatly in its own small bowl near the corner of your breakfast tray. It's brownish tan, glossy, and sticky. Very sticky. You shift in your seat, watching how it clings to itself like it's made of cobwebs and commitment. Threads stretch and shimmer as you lift a single bite with your chopsticks. And that smell, mildly nutty, a bit funky, and slightly reminiscent of damp straw, wafts upward as if daring you to take the plunge. You've met rice, miso, umeboshi, but now comes natto, the fermented soybean dish that has inspired reverence and rebellion across Japan for over 1,000 years. Natto isn't flashy, it's not beautiful, and, let's be honest, it's not even particularly inviting. But in the world of the samurai, natto had its place, not just as a food, but as a morning ritual, a symbol of discipline, and a badge of resilience. You stir it gently, strings form, clinging to your chopsticks, your bowl, and your patience. These fine threads, glutinous and endless, are the unmistakable mark of properly fermented natto. They're also the reason so many first-time eaters pause, but you continue. Because in a samurai's world, discomfort was not the enemy. In fact, learning to sit with discomfort was part of the training. You take your first bite. It's warm, soft, sticky, and surprisingly mild on the tongue. Not bland. There's a nuttiness, a slight bitterness, a background tang of fermentation, but subtle. Your teeth glide through the beans, which feel a little like overcooked peanuts bathed in glue. It doesn't sound appealing, and yet you chew, slowly, thoughtfully, because this is a dish that asks something of you. Historically, natto was the food of practicality. Soybeans were cheap, filling, and loaded with nutrients. When fermented with the natural bacteria found in rice straw, Bacillus subtilis, they became more digestible, preserved longer, and gained an edge in flavour. This fermentation technique likely dates back to the Heian or Kamakura periods, though it became more widespread during the Edo era, when the nutritional benefits and ease of preparation made it a favourite of both farmers and fighters. Samurai, especially in eastern regions like Kanto, often started their mornings with natto, not for flavour, though some grew to crave it, but for what it did for the body. It was protein-rich in an otherwise low-meat diet, and full of iron, fibre and enzymes. Some claimed it gave warriors stamina for battle. Others believed it boosted mental clarity during meditation. Either way, it became a kind of quiet companion in the samurai routine. Historians still argue over natto's social associations. Was it a low food for poorer samurai, or a respected staple. Some records suggest elite families developed a taste for natto and even fermented their own batches at home. In more frugal households, natto might be paired with barley or brown rice rather than pure white grains. Others seasoned it with green onion, mustard or soy sauce to bring out the depth of flavour. You do the same. A dash of karashi, sharp, yellow, eye-watering mustard, is stirred into the mix. The natto becomes foamier, stringier, livelier. You top it with finely chopped scallions, whose fresh bite balances the fermented funk. A small drizzle of soy sauce darkens the mixture and brings salt to the surface. Another bite. Better. The flavours are rounding out. The rice absorbs the texture, giving the natto a creamy, almost luxurious mouthfeel. It's still strange, yes, but also strangely comforting. There's a certain rhythm to it now. Stir, lift, wrap, eat. The threads, once a nuisance, now feel like part of the ceremony. In some warrior households, there was a tradition of stirring your natto exactly 75 times. No more, no less. Why 75? No one really knows. No. Some say it created the perfect foam. Others say it was a test of patience. Either way, the idea was the same. Even breakfast could be a training exercise. You pause, chopsticks resting on your bowl, and consider that thought. A dish like natto doesn't pamper you, it confronts you. Not in a hostile way, but in the way a good teacher does. It challenges your assumptions about what is appetizing, what is beautiful, what is worthy of your attention. You can't rush through it. You can't distract yourself while eating it. You have to be present. You have to adapt. And that is exactly what makes it perfect samurai food. There are old samurai proverbs that speak to the nature of food. Bitter medicine heals the body, bitter words heal the soul. Natto may not be bitter in taste, but it fits the spirit of the saying. It reminds you that not everything meant to nourish you will be easy. Sometimes it's the foods that demand the most patience that stay with you longest. A curious fringe tradition. During times of war, some soldiers carried dried natto wrapped in rice straw. When rehydrated with hot water, it became a kind of soup, both fortifying and familiar. It's said that generals sometimes issued natto as part of rations to maintain troop morale, not because it was delicious, but because it tasted of home. In modern Japan, natto remains a cultural touchstone. Some adore it, others avoid it. Children wrinkle their noses, grandparents stir it with pride. It's sold in convenience stores, served in school lunches, and debated on morning talk shows. It's a food that asks you to choose a side and teaches you something about yourself in the process. You finish the last of the bowl, not rushed, not forced, just quietly. The sticky threads stretch and finally break as you set the chopsticks down. You sip your tea. It tastes brighter now, cleaner. The aftertaste of natto lingers gently, not pungent, not heavy, just present. Like the soft echo of a taiko drum long after the last beat. And you feel, more than anything, ready. Not bursting with energy, not weighed down, just alert, aware, balanced. The kind of quiet power that comes not from feasting, but from enduring something small and strange, and finding strength in it. Because natto, like the samurai spirit itself, doesn't exist to please, it exists to center you. There it is, quietly tucked in the top right corner of your breakfast tray. It doesn't shimmer like the rice or steam like the soup, and it certainly doesn't puff its chest like the umeboshi or swing its threads like natto. But make no mistake, this modest piece of grilled fish holds its own. A small fillet, no more than the size of your palm, carefully browned along the edges, its skin crisp, its flesh pale and pearly. No sauce, no garnish, no theatrics, just salt, fire, and time. You lift it with your chopsticks. The skin gives a little crackle under your grip. The flesh parts with grace. No tearing, just gentle surrender. The smell is smoky and clean, with a faint whisper of the sea. You take your first bite. It's light, tender, salty in the best way. The outside is golden with just the hint of char. Inside, the meat is moist and flaky. There's no oil slick, no syrupy glaze. It's all elemental: fish, fire, and restraint. Grilled fish, known as yakizakana, was a foundational element of the samurai breakfast. Not every day, especially for lower-ranking samurai, but often enough to become a familiar comfort. Its appeal: simplicity, nutrition, and clarity. Unlike fatty meats, fish provided protein and vital minerals without heaviness. It awakened the senses without overpowering them. For a warrior whose mornings might include sword drills, writing poetry, or attending a strategy meeting, this was the perfect companion. Historians still argue which species were most common in different provinces. In mountainous domains, freshwater fish like ayu, sweetfish, iwana, char, and trout were common, caught in narrow rivers by hand or net. Near the sea, families ate sardines, mackerel, or horse mackerel, often salted the night before and grilled fresh at dawn. Wealthier households occasionally had fresh sea bream or salmon delivered from distant ports on ice, packed in sawdust, a luxury that signalled both power and precision. You notice the salt as it lingers, not harsh, but deliberate. Salt wasn't merely a flavour enhancer, it was preservation. In an age before refrigeration, fish was often salted in advance, then dried or semi-dried to keep it edible longer. This process also deepened the flavour, giving grilled fish its characteristic intensity, a kind of culinary concentration. In your bowl, beside the fish, sits a small mound of grated daikon radish. Pale, cool, and slightly juicy, it's the yin to the fish's yang. You scoop a little and pair it with your next bite. The combination is refreshing. The daikon cleans the palate. The salt finds balance. The textures play off one another. The flakiness of the fish against the crisp, watery crumble of the radish. A fun tidbit. Samurai were taught to fillet fish with precision, using long, thin blades to separate meat from bone without waste. This wasn't just about skill. It was about respect. Respect for the animal, for the cook, for the table. Even the act of grilling was methodical. Fires were built carefully with binchatan charcoal, known for its clean, consistent heat and minimal smoke. The grill itself, a simple wire rack, was elevated just enough to allow the heat to kiss the flesh, not scorch it. It was an exercise in restraint. You chew slowly now, not because the fish is tough, it melts really, but because there's something meditative about it. You imagine a young samurai preparing this very meal with his own hands. He rises early, cleans the fish with care, salts it, sets it on the rack and squats beside the fire as the coals glow red. He watches, waits, no thermometer, just scent, sound, instinct. And when it's done, he doesn't devour it. He places it on a simple ceramic plate, bows his head, and begins his meal. Fish was rarely centre stage in the samurai breakfast, but it played a crucial supporting role. It completed the puzzle, balanced the meal, provided the protein that rice and soup could not, and it reminded the eater of their place in the world, of rivers and oceans, of tides and time, of labour and luck. Some households observed quiet customs around the fish. The first bite was always taken from the centre, not the edges. Bones were never broken or discarded messily. In some regions, they were even buried beneath plum trees or burned with incense as an offering of thanks. Because in a world where life could be taken with a blade, taking life for nourishment carried ritual weight. And sometimes fish wasn't just food, it was status. During diplomatic meetings, samurai lords might present prized dried fish as gifts, mackerel from the southern islands, or river trout smoked with chestnut bark. There were even entire taxes paid in salted fish during lean rice years. One warlord, known for his ascetic lifestyle, once refused an offer of grilled sea bream, claiming it would dull his edge. His retainers were secretly disappointed. You finish your portion now, cleanly. Every flake accounted for, every bone separated and laid gently on the plate. You sip your tea and let the flavours linger. The salt remains at the corners of your lips, the smoke a memory at the back of your throat. In modern Japan, fish still holds its place at breakfast. though now often joined by rolled omelettes, tofu or salad. But the essence is unchanged. A small portion of grilled fish, a quiet companion to a quiet meal. Not loud, not flashy, just right. And as you rest your chopsticks across the tray, a thought flickers. You didn't just eat a piece of fish. You joined a centuries-old conversation, one bite at a time. Your tray has grown quieter now. The rice bowl is mostly empty, its once steaming grains clinging gently to the sides. The miso soup has cooled. The grilled fish has been carefully dismantled, bones set neatly aside. But before you finish, your eyes land on a small dish. Tucked in the upper left corner, nearly forgotten amid the more commanding parts of the meal, it's a small porcelain plate, just large enough to hold a few slices of colour. This is tsukemono, the humble pickled vegetable. You reach out for one, a bright yellow coin of takuan, pickled daikon radish. The texture is firm, the surface slightly glossy. You lift it with your chopsticks and take a bite. It crunches audibly between your teeth. The flavour is sharp, salty, tangy, with just a suggestion of sweetness beneath. It's bracing. But unlike the shock of umeboshi, this isn't aggressive. It's clean, refreshing. Tsukemono was never just a side dish for the samurai. It was a finishing touch, a quiet punctuation mark that both closed and elevated the meal. While the rice provided stability, the soup warmth and the fish nourishment, pickles delivered contrast, both in flavour and texture. They were the sparkle in an otherwise muted palate, the flourish in a tightly composed haiku. Samurai culture revered balance, not just in combat or strategy, but in daily life. And tsukemono were balance distilled into food. Too much richness, a pickle would cut through it. Too much blandness. A slice of pickled plum or cucumber would nudge the palate awake. In a sense, tsukemono acted like a blade, not to injure, but to sharpen. The methods of making pickles varied widely, from simple vinegar brines to elaborate fermentation in rice bran, nukazuke, miso, misozuke, or even sake lees, kasuzuke. Some vegetables were salted and left to ferment naturally, pressed under heavy stones for days or weeks. Others were pickled overnight to be eaten the next morning while still crisp and lively. Each style produced a different flavour, different aroma, different lifespan. You try a second piece, this one a slender slice of pickled cucumber, likely brined with salt, vinegar and a bit of sugar. It's cooler than the daikon, milder too, with a clean bite that slides across the tongue and disappears almost immediately. A palate cleanser, yes, but also a memory keeper. For in every slice of pickle is the echo of the season that produced it. Cucumber in the summer, turnip in winter, eggplant in autumn, bamboo shoots in spring. Historians still argue whether tsukemono was present in every samurai breakfast, or reserved for specific households or ceremonies. What's certain is that by the Edo period, pickling had become both an art and a science. In wealthier homes, elaborate pickle jars sat beside hearths or in kitchen storage rooms, tended daily by servants or matriarchs. The pickling crock was a living thing. It had to be fed, stirred, protected from mould and scented properly. A well-maintained pickle pot was a sign of a well-run home. Samurai, of course, were expected to focus on martial affairs, but even they could not ignore the deeper wisdom embedded in such domestic rituals. Some warrior poets wrote verses comparing tsukemono to seasonal change or to fleeting joys. One scroll even describes a samurai meditating while stirring the nuka bed, drawing parallels between the turning of vegetables in brine and the turning of thoughts in the mind. Both require patience, and both, if neglected, rot. You chew slowly, appreciating the quiet crunch. There is no rush here, no pressure to speak. Meals in a samurai household were often taken in silence or soft conversation. Eating was a form of practice, and tsukemono, with its simplicity and restraint, reflected that spirit. There's an old tale, half legend, half etiquette guide, about a daimyo who visited a distant province and was served only rice tea and 3 slices of sukemono for breakfast. His retainers panicked, fearing the host would be punished for serving such a sparse meal. But the lord, upon finishing, simply said, "I have never been so well understood." He appreciated the quiet care in the pickle's preparation more than any lavish feast. That's the thing about sukemono. It speaks softly, but it always has something to say. You glance back at the plate. A third piece awaits, possibly shibazuke, the vivid purple pickle made with cucumbers, eggplant and red shiso leaves, native to Kyoto. This one tastes more fermented, earthy, tangy with depth, the kind of flavour that lingers at the top of the throat. You chew, and for a moment you can imagine a wooden vat in a quiet town, where this very pickle aged in shadow and silence for weeks. Some samurai families developed house recipes, passed down not in ink but in daily touch. A pinch more salt, less garlic, ferment longer in winter. These weren't just culinary details, they were a form of inheritance, as intimate as sword techniques or poetry scrolls. And the colours. Oh, the colours. Tsukemono brought visual harmony to the tray. A yellow daikon, a white radish, a green cucumber, a purple eggplant. Japanese meals often followed the principle of goshiki. The 5 colours, white, black, red, green, and yellow. A balanced meal should include all 5. Tsukemono made that possible with very little effort. Even a simple breakfast looked composed. You sip your tea now. The bitterness of roasted barley meets the vinegar left on your tongue. The combination is warm, grounding. You feel awake, not just physically, but mentally. Pickles, you realise, don't just stimulate digestion, they clear the fog. A quirky belief from the Edo period held that starting your day with a single slice of pickled plum would keep evil spirits at bay. Another claimed that the crackle of a daikon pickle under the teeth drove away bad luck. Whether or not anyone believed it literally, the sense remains. Tsukemono was protection. Flavour armour. And just like the samurai armour itself, it was layered, complex, quietly powerful. You reach for the final piece on the plate. A soft pink sliver, perhaps benishoga, ginger pickled in plum vinegar. It is spicy, sweet and sour all at once. The bite is quick, but the aftertaste is long. A final note before the silence. You place your chopsticks down, cross them neatly. You glance over your tray. It's nearly empty, but you don't feel lack. You feel complete. Not full exactly, but whole. That's what the samurai breakfast was designed for. It didn't chase satisfaction, it built foundation. Every element from the rice to the pickle was placed with care. The sukemono especially reminded you that even small things carry meaning, that the ordinary done well becomes extraordinary. As you rise from your meal, you remember the crunch, the colour, the balance, and above all, the clarity. A good pickle doesn't just finish a meal, it sharpens the memory of it. And for a samurai preparing to step into a world of duty and decision, what could be more important than that? You've worked your way through most of the tray. The rice is nearly gone. The pickles are polished off. The fish has been handled with care, every bite deliberate, every bone neatly set aside. The miso has long since cooled in your belly, and the tea now rests comfortably warm in your hand. But just as your appetite begins to settle, the final dish presents itself with the quiet confidence of something that doesn't need to be flashy to matter. It's a small lacquered bowl. You lift the lid, and gentle steam curls upward, releasing a faintly nutty aroma. Something mild, soothing, and unmistakably tofu. Inside is a delicate square, soft and slightly jiggly, cradled in a light clear broth. The surface glistens. Floating nearby are paper-thin scallions, a dab of freshly grated ginger, and maybe a drizzle of soy sauce or a touch of citrusy ponzu, depending on the season. You slide your chopsticks into the tofu. It parts easily, like silk yielding to breath. No resistance, no struggle. Just smooth surrender. You lift a piece to your lips. It trembles slightly before landing gently on your tongue. It's quiet, not bland, not tasteless, but calm, creamy, nutty, and whisper soft. There's something profoundly grounding in the simplicity. It doesn't demand attention, it earns it. Tofu, especially yudofu or simmered tofu, was a subtle but frequent guest at samurai breakfast tables. Not every morning, of course, but often enough to become trusted companion, especially during colder months when warmth was needed not just in the room, but in the bones. Its origins go back much further. Tofu first arrived in Japan from China during the Nara period, 8th century, likely brought by Buddhist monks who valued its purity and nutritional content. From temple kitchens, it made its way into the households of nobles and eventually into the daily rhythms of samurai. By the Edo period, tofu making had become an artisan craft. Entire neighborhoods had tofu-ya, dedicated tofu makers who rose before dawn to begin the silent sacred process. To make tofu is to practice patience. Soybeans are soaked overnight, ground into a paste and boiled to extract soy milk. Then comes the alchemy, adding nigari, a mineral-rich coagulant, and stirring gently as the liquid thickens. The curds form slowly, gently ladled into wooden moulds lined with cheesecloth. They're pressed, not crushed, shaped, not forced, and within a few hours the block is born. Each morning lines would form outside the tofu shop, people gathering with baskets or cloth-wrapped trays to carry home still warm bricks of the pale, delicate food. For samurai households, sending a servant or going yourself was a daily rhythm, like drawing water or sweeping the genkan. Historians still debate how widely tofu featured in breakfast across all ranks of the warrior class. Was it more common in Kyoto among cultured retainers, more frequent in Buddhist-aligned domains, or perhaps reserved for the more scholarly samurai, the ones who wrote poetry with their left hand and wielded the katana with their right? Regardless of geography, tofu had a universal appeal. It was affordable, adaptable, and nutritious. High in protein and low in fat, it offered strength without heaviness, a rare quality in a world where energy was earned, not purchased. It could be steamed, grilled, fried, chilled, marinated, mashed, or fermented. But in the morning, at the quiet start of a long day, it was usually served in its gentlest form, yudofu, warmed in water or dashi and presented as is. You take another bite. This time you dip it in a tiny pool of soy sauce that's gathered along the rim of the bowl. The umami deepens. The tofu still doesn't fight for dominance. It simply receives the flavour and offers it back. More rounded, more mellow, like a seasoned listener who speaks only when needed. A curious fringe belief among Edo-era samurai was that tofu cultivated humility. A man who could appreciate something so soft, so quiet, was less likely to be swayed by ego or excess. Swordmasters reportedly recommended tofu breakfast before duels, not because of superstition, but because tofu reminded the body to move with fluidity, not force. It cooled the nerves and steadied the hand. In some schools of thought, tofu was associated with water, flexible, flowing, adapting to its container without losing its nature. And wasn't that too the ideal of the warrior? To be unshakable yet not rigid, to yield but never break. You stir the bowl gently. A few strands of scallion float across the broth. The warmth is steady now, travelling from your lips to your chest. You sip from the bowl directly, another tradition, allowing the savoury, soybean-infused liquid to coat your mouth. The sensation is one of settling, as though every dish you've eaten so far has been leading to this. Tofu doesn't provide a climax, it provides a landing, a safe return to centre. It's worth noting too that tofu was often made in small batches. It was local, seasonal, handmade. This wasn't factory fare. This was community food. Tofu-ya workers were known by name. Recipes were guarded secrets, passed from parent to child. And though tofu itself might seem flavourless, In the right hands, it became something that didn't just nourish, it connected. You pause for a moment. Look out the shoji screen beside you. Imagine mist curling along the garden path, stones still slick with dew. Somewhere, a temple bell tolls. The tofu in your bowl, though long removed from the fields where its beans once grew, feels like a direct line to something ancient. Something still. You eat the last piece. It slides effortlessly from bowl to mouth, gone in a breath, but the warmth remains. The samurai didn't need extravagance to feel full. They didn't measure a meal by how loud it was or how sweet or how spicy. They measured it by how balanced it left them. Not weighed down, not buzzing, just ready. And tofu, soft, steady, unassuming, offered exactly that. It wasn't just food. It was practice. It was peace. The tray before you is now nearly bare. The bowls have been quietly emptied, the last flecks of rice clinging to ceramic edges. The steam from your miso has faded into the air. The delicate bones of your grilled fish have been aligned respectfully at the side of the plate. The pickles are gone, their tangy memory still whispering on your tongue, and the tofu, soft and silken, has disappeared without a sound. Every dish served its role in silence, never demanding attention, but giving it freely. You place your chopsticks down, parallel, polite. You inhale once, exhale slowly. But you don't stand just yet, because if you were a samurai in the Edo period, this wouldn't be the end of your morning. In fact, the meal was only the beginning. A kind of reset button, a tuning fork for body and mind. What followed was not indulgence or relaxation, but training. The quiet, rigorous shaping of yourself before the rest of the world could interfere. You stand slowly, knees cracking a little as the morning stiffness lifts from your limbs. The tatami under your feet is cool and forgiving. You turn toward the sliding shoji door and open it gently. Beyond lies the engawa, the covered veranda that wraps around the house, wood underfoot, bamboo rustling beyond. The scent of damp earth and morning fire smoke weaves through the garden air. You step outside. It's cool, but not cold. The kind of morning that balances perfectly between breath and breeze. You stretch gently, first one shoulder then the other. You rotate your neck. Everything feels loose now, fluid. That's what the meal did. No heaviness, no sluggishness, just readiness. And then comes the ritual of asamawari, the morning circuit, the practice that sets the tone for everything else. For some samurai, this meant sword drills. For others, calligraphy, tea-making, or even cleaning the estate grounds with intention and grace. Whatever the activity, the purpose was the same: to align the spirit with the coming day, to ensure the hands moved with purpose, the feet touched the ground with awareness, and the mind didn't scatter like leaves in the wind. You reach for your bokken, your wooden sword. Smooth, balanced, worn from years of practice. The grip fits your palm as if shaped by it. You bow slightly to the tool, as is tradition, a nod of respect. Then, standing tall, you begin. Your kata is slow and deliberate, a pattern of cuts and steps, honed not for spectacle, but for control. Right foot forward, sword rises, elbow bends, blade arcs downward. Pause, hold, breathe. Your body remembers the rhythm, and your stomach, now fed and satisfied, doesn't distract or drag. The breakfast you just consumed, simple, thoughtful, balanced, has become fuel, not filler. You feel it in your theases as you shift stance, in your shoulders as you pivot, in your chest as your breath deepens. You aren't performing. You're practicing. You're inhabiting the body you just nourished. Historians still argue about the exact training schedules samurai followed. Some documents describe rigorous sword drills at dawn. Others emphasize zazen meditation or military planning. But across every record, one truth echoes. Samurai life was structured. Not because of strictness alone, but because structure was a form of freedom. And at the center of that structure, breakfast. A heavy meal would make a swordsman sluggish. A sparse one might leave him distracted or faint. The samurai breakfast, in its measured simplicity, aimed for the middle way. It didn't fill the body so much as harmonize it. Rice for endurance, miso for warmth, fish for strength, pickles for clarity, tofu for calm, tea for cleansing. Together these dishes created a body capable of precision, of decision, of peace. You finish your sequence of kata and return the bokken to your side. You bow again. The garden is quiet. A single crow calls from somewhere above the pine trees. The moment stretches. You step back inside and sit once more, not to eat, but to reflect. It was not uncommon for samurai to keep journals, short records of meals, dreams, weather, observations. Some entries simply read, "Fish was firm, pickle was sharp, body moved well." Others waxed poetic. "This morning miso flowed like clouded thoughts. Pickled radish sliced the fog away." There was mindfulness in every element, from the grain of rice to the swing of a blade. You pour yourself one final cup of tea, the last of the pot now slightly cooled. You drink slowly, feeling the warmth fill the same space where rice once sat. It's the perfect end. Bitter, gentle, steadying. And as you sip, your thoughts drift. Not to battle or duty or politics, but to the meal. You revisit each dish in memory. The first bite of rice, soft and grounding. The miso, smoky and umami-rich, awakening the belly. The fish, flaking into clean, salty pieces. The pickles, bright and crisp, resetting your senses. The tofu, smooth as silk, delivering quiet strength. And now the tea, finishing the cycle with warmth and clarity. You look again at the empty tray, and you see not leftovers, but ritual completed. There's a curious phrase recorded in a 17th century fencing scroll. "He who cannot eat with attention will swing with distraction." It seems funny now, almost too simple to be profound. But there's truth in it. The meal was the first test of your awareness, a chance to practice balance before facing the imbalances of the world. And maybe that's what the samurai understood best, that life isn't all duels and declarations. Sometimes it's about how you stir natto without flinging threads across the table, how you separate fish from bone, how you drink tea slowly enough to feel the steam hit your throat before the liquid ever does. The sun rises higher now. The household stirs. The courtyard begins to echo with light steps and gentle chatter. Somewhere in the distance, a gate creaks open. The day is beginning for everyone else, but for you, it already began. Back when the rice was still steaming and the tofu still trembled in its bowl, you take a deep breath, stretch once more, and stand. Not full, not empty. You step away from the breakfast tray and feel a subtle shift in your body. It's not dramatic, there's no surge of energy, no racing heart, but it's undeniable. A kind of quiet alertness has settled into your limbs, the way a well-oiled machine hums rather than roars. This is the afterglow of balance, and in the daily life of a samurai, it's not something to take lightly. Now that your body is nourished and your mind sharpened, the day begins in earnest. But before we charge off into political meetings, sword drills, or tea ceremonies, we have to take care of one thing most modern viewers rarely imagine when thinking of samurai life: household duties. Yes, even warriors who lived by the sword were often expected to live with the broom, the ladle, and the ledger. And so you pick up a cloth. Yes, a cloth. The sun hasn't climbed far yet, but its slanting light already reveals the dust that's settled on the polished floors of your house. Just as you practiced your sword kata with precision, now you approach your household tasks with the same mindful grace. It's easy to forget that many samurai, especially lower-ranking ones, lived more like civil servants than warriors. While popular culture paints them constantly on horseback or mid-duel, most spent their days maintaining the home, handling bureaucracy, or training for the battles that might never come. Cleaning wasn't beneath a samurai, it was part of their practice. Floors were swept, tatami were wiped down, garden paths were cleared of leaves, not by servants necessarily, but often by the samurai himself or with family. Why? because discipline began at home, because stillness in the mind started with stillness in the space. You kneel, fold your cloth, and begin wiping the ngawa, board by board, each stroke smooth and even. The wood is cool under your palm. It catches the light just right. As you work, your body falls into a rhythm, left, right, forward, back. There's no music, no podcast. Just the quiet shh of cloth on wood and the occasional chirp of birds outside. A curious historical note. Samurai homes, even those of middle rank, were often surprisingly modest. A few rooms, sliding screens, a small garden. Maybe a storage room for armour and weapons, but no grand halls or opulent dining rooms. The aesthetic favoured simplicity, shaped heavily by Zen Buddhist influence. Clean lines, natural materials, and very little ornamentation. Which, in a way, made cleaning easier and more meaningful. When your surroundings are uncluttered, even the smallest speck of dust feels out of place. And when your day might contain matters of diplomacy or swordsmanship, having one clean corner to return to can feel like anchoring yourself to the earth. You finish the floor and move to the inner room, the Tokonoma alcove. It's the spiritual heart of the house, often decorated with a hanging scroll and a small vase or sculpture. Today it holds a single ikebana arrangement, a branch of plum blossoms just beginning to bloom. You bow slightly as you pass it, not from obligation but from instinct. Historians still argue whether samurai truly performed their own chores daily, or whether this ideal was promoted more in Bushido manuals than in real households. There are records of lords performing menial tasks in front of their retainers to model humility. Whether symbolic or sincere, the message was clear. No task was too small for a warrior who respected his path. You return your cleaning cloth to the corner and pause. The house feels quieter now, as if it has acknowledged your efforts. You sit for a moment in the freshly cleaned space. Your breath slows. You notice the way the light dances on the grain of the floor. Even here, even now there's beauty. Then comes record keeping. Yes, paperwork. Not the exciting part of samurai life, but a real one. You unroll a scroll on the low desk and reach for your ink brush. Today's duties include logging your rations, reviewing the household's rice allotment, and making note of the meal's components, especially if they came from your own fields. Many samurai managed farms or rice stipends, and while some had stewards, others preferred to oversee things personally. Rice was wealth. Fish had to be purchased or traded. Tofu might come from the local tofuya, but the daikon used in pickles, likely grown on your own land. You jot down the notes with care. The act of writing is deliberate, the characters steady. This wasn't merely bookkeeping, it was observation turned into discipline. How many plums were used this week? Were the pickles fermenting too fast? Had the charcoal supply dwindled? Even the humble breakfast you just ate had to be accounted for. A fringe belief from some scrolls says that one who cannot master his ledger cannot master his blade. Oh, perhaps a touch exaggerated, but you see the point. A samurai had to know the weight of things, literally and metaphorically. You close the scroll, set your ink aside, and glance toward the courtyard. The sun has risen higher now. The trees cast short shadows. The world is waking. And so you move on, not to combat, not to duels, but maybe to letter writing, or overseeing repairs to the estate, or supervising junior retainers. Some days would include a trip to town to speak with local merchants or artisans. Others would be spent reviewing scrolls of strategy or practicing shodo, the way of calligraphy. But whatever comes next, it begins with this: a clear body, a clear house, and a clear head. And all of that started quite simply with breakfast. Not just the meal, but the rhythm it created, the order it encouraged, the gentle fullness that didn't beg for more. You feel it now, that rhythm, still humming in your bones. There's no rush, no urgency, just a calm readiness. You're not overfed nor undernourished. You're centered, and that was always the point. The morning unfolds like brush strokes across parchment, steady, practiced, deliberate. Your body feels light, your thoughts anchored, and the rhythm of the day carries on with that same quiet balance that began with breakfast. But as the sun climbs higher and the courtyard warms, you shift from your household tasks to one of the more curious, often overlooked duties in the life of a samurai. Education. That's right. Before the next battle, before any dueling or guard duty, many samurai returned indoors to sit, not to rest, but to read. You settle onto a cushion beside a low writing table, brush and ink at your side. A scroll is already unfurled. Today's text, perhaps a volume of Confucian teachings or a poetic anthology, or a treatise on military strategy by Yamaga Soko. You dip your brush into the ink and begin to copy the characters, one by one. The soft scratch of ink on washi paper fills the room. It's almost musical. You aren't merely copying for practice. You're memorizing, internalizing the rhythm of the language, the ideals behind the brushstrokes. Samurai were not just warriors. They were scholars, expected to understand not just tactics and weaponry, but literature, philosophy, law, and even history. It wasn't uncommon for a samurai to be more skilled with the brush than with the blade, particularly during the long stretches of peace in the Edo period. Bushido, after all, meant more than battlefield glory. It meant virtue, loyalty, and cultivated thought. Historians still debate whether the average samurai was truly literate, or if education was limited to elite retainers. Records show widespread use of temple schools, terrakoya, and clan-sponsored academies, suggesting that even lower-ranking samurai received basic training in reading and writing. More prestigious households boasted entire libraries and held poetry contests as forms of intellectual sparring. You pause in your writing and sip the last of your morning tea, now tepid but comforting. The aftertaste of roasted barley sits gently on your tongue, mingling with the faint scent of ink. The quiet is thick. You hear a paper lantern swaying slightly in the corner. It creaks in time with the breeze. Back at the scroll you continue. The quote you're copying reads, "Govern the self before governing others. Let the morning set the day." A small ironic smile tugs at your lips. You think of your own morning, the tofu, the fish, the silence. The way each dish came not just with calories, but with intention. In this light, even your breakfast was a form of study. You finish the passage and place your brush down. It's not just your hand that feels steadier, it's your heart. As the sun inches higher, another call beckons. This time, it's maintenance. Not of the body, nor of the mind, but of the very tools that define your station. You retrieve your katana from its display stand. The sheath is polished, the cord wrapped neatly, the blade untouched since your last training session. But that's the point. A samurai doesn't wait for rust. He prevents it. With a cloth and a soft powder ball, you begin the ritual of cleaning your sword. You unsheath it carefully, blade glinting in the sunlight now pouring through the lattice windows. The edge is silent, but deadly. There's no music here, no drum beat, only the slow rhythm of cloth against steel, oil against friction. You wipe the old oil away, inspect the steel for any nicks, apply a fresh layer of choji oil, scented faintly of clove. Your hands move confidently. This is not the hurried polish of vanity, but the deliberate practice of care. A fringe practice among some samurai was to clean the blade only after a perfectly composed haiku had been written, not out of superstition, but to ensure the warrior was in a calm enough state of mind to handle something so deadly. The idea being, only a still hand may touch the storm. You don't write a poem today, but the mood is the same. As you finish your work and resheath the blade, you bow slightly, not to the weapon itself, but to the discipline that allows it to rest in peace. Next, you examine your armor, not to wear it, but to maintain it. You check the stitching of your do, chest plate, the knots in your sword, shoulder guards, and the lacquered surface of your kabuto, helmet. Any weakness here could mean disaster later. Like the cracks in a rice bowl or the loose hinge of a tea box, flaws must be caught early. Because samurai didn't only train for combat, they prepared for prevention. There's a story from the 1700s about a retainer who polished his lord's armour daily, even though the domain hadn't seen battle in over a century. When asked why, he replied, "The enemy is not always a man. Sometimes it is time." You think about that as you tie and retie a single strap, ensuring it holds. Even the food from earlier makes a quiet reappearance in this moment. You feel its clarity in your joints, its focus in your eyes. The breakfast wasn't just to fill you, it was to stabilise you for moments exactly like this, when attention to detail isn't just nice, but necessary. And now, the morning nears its end. You've eaten, cleaned, read, trained, polished, written, and breathed. You've done it without fanfare, without multitasking, without seeking anything other than what was in front of you. And that's the secret, isn't it? The samurai life wasn't always swords clashing and blood-soaked banners. Most of it happened here, in still rooms, along quiet verandas, under slanting light. In the rituals repeated every morning, long before the world asked anything of you. And every morning started the same way. Not with urgency, but with a tray of carefully prepared food, eaten slowly, with purpose. You glance at the corner where your tray was set only an hour or two ago. It's gone now, taken away and cleaned, but its effects still linger. Not in your belly, but in your breath. Not in your memory, but in your muscle. The balance, the structure, the quiet strength. It's all still there. You rise from your cushion, stretch once more, and prepare to face the rest of your day. But this time, you do so with a body warmed by broth, a mind sharpened by ginger, and a soul calmed by tofu. The battlefield may come later, but this morning, you've already won. Now the day stretches long before you. Tasks await, appointments at the castle, letters to deliver, reports to file with a senior retainer. But first, before you slip into sandals and step beyond the estate, there is one more ritual that ties everything together, a visit to the household shrine. Every samurai home, no matter how humble or grand, had a kamidana, a god shelf, tucked high on a wall or built into a recessed alcove. This was not some sprawling temple, but a modest wooden platform, maybe the length of 2 hands, where small offerings could be made to the protective spirits of the home. A folded sheet of white paper, a branch of evergreen, a miniature dish of rice or salt. And today, as every day, you step before it in stillness. You bow once, clap your hands twice, bow again. There is no long prayer, no chant, just a moment of reconnection. What do you thank the spirits for today? Perhaps for the smooth edge of your blade, or the crispness of the pickled daikon, maybe even the warm tea that lingered on your tongue. The samurai didn't separate the spiritual from the mundane. Breakfast could be sacred, sword practice, a meditation, cleaning, a kind of prayer. You don't linger at the shrine, you bow again and step away. The light from the garden briefly catching the edge of your shoulder plate as you prepare to go. Now it's time to step into the outer world. The sandals come on with a practiced shuffle, and the front gate of your home creaks open. Outside is the town, a grid of stone-paved alleys and wooden buildings, each smelling faintly of smoke, soy, or sandalwood. Vendors are setting up their wares. Children chase paper balls down narrow lanes. And in the distance, a bell sounds from the direction of the castle. Time is ticking. Your first stop is the town records office, where a delivery awaits. As a mid-ranking samurai, you're both a warrior and an administrator. You carry orders, enforce the law, and deliver decisions made by your lord's council. You're also expected to lead by example. How you walk, how you speak, how you dress. It all reflects your clan's reputation. And today, the townspeople glance at you not with fear, but with polite nods. Your robe is clean. Your movements are measured. You don't rush. Why would you? You've started your day with equilibrium. There's no need to chase it. At the records office, a scribe greets you. He bows, hands you a scroll. You bow in return and read it. A rice dispute between neighbours. You nod, fold the paper, and tuck it away to deliver later. As you leave, your stomach does not grumble. There is no sluggishness, no distracting thirst. That modest tray of food continues to support you in the quiet background, like the string of a bow, invisible, but holding tension with grace. You pass by a tofu shop. The smell of freshly pressed curds and steaming vats of soy milk drifts into the street. A woman kneels outside, sorting morning deliveries. You remember your own breakfast tofu, soft and warm in its light broth. You almost bow in appreciation as you walk past. Historians still debate just how involved samurai were in town life. Some say they remained aloof, separate from merchants and craftsmen. Others argue that daily interactions like these were common, especially in smaller domains where warriors were administrators as well as defenders. Regardless of rank, this samurai had to exist in the world, not above it. You stop by a small bridge and watch a fish dart beneath the surface of the stream. For a moment, you're reminded of the grilled trout from earlier, the way the skin curled ever so slightly, the way the bone came clean with a single tug. The memory isn't culinary, it's sensory. And in that moment, you realise the meal didn't end at the table. It continues in the way your body feels, in how your mind remains unclouded. The echoes of breakfast ripple through the hours like that fish gliding underwater. A fringe tradition among some samurai families involved writing down a single moment of clarity each morning. Not at breakfast, but sometime after. It could be a smell, a sound, or an idea. Something you'd otherwise miss. You think now of what yours might be. Maybe the way the tea cooled to the perfect temperature as you wrote, or how the pickle bite paired with that final mouthful of rice, or even this quiet instant leaning on a bridge as the day unfolds around you. You walk on. At a storefront, two young boys bow as you pass. They look curious, perhaps imagining where you're going, what business you handle, what it means to carry a sword and move through town like a reed in the wind. You nod to them but say nothing. Let them wonder. Because that's the thing. You don't need to appear imposing to be respected. Today, your strength isn't shown through intimidation. It's reflected in the order of your breath, the clean line of your robe, the steady beat of your footfall. The breakfast helped. The silence helped. The practice helped. You arrive at the final stop of the morning. The small house of a retired elder, a former retainer now living quietly in the hills. You deliver a scroll, exchange brief pleasantries, and offer him a pouch of fresh pickles made by your household. He smiles at that, a rare smile deep with memory. He knows. The pickle isn't a gift. It's a gesture of care, a continuation of the values he once lived himself. He offers you tea. You accept. The two of you sit beneath the eaves, watching the wind shift the pine trees. No one speaks for a while. The tea is mild, bitter in the best way. And as you drink, you realise the morning has come full circle. Not through excitement or ceremony, but through consistency. You rose, you ate, you moved, you cleaned, you read, you spoke, you delivered. And now you sit again, warm cup in hand with the world turning slowly around you. Not because of what you did, but because of how you did it. And it all began with the rice, the miso, the tofu. You thank the elder, bow deeply, and prepare to leave. The rest of the day awaits, full of its own currents and interruptions. But you have your centre, because breakfast wasn't just a meal. It was your first act of intention. You return home just before midday, stepping once again onto the smooth stone path that winds through your modest garden. The sun, now high in the sky, casts short shadows from the bamboo fence and the low cedar shrubs that frame your walkway. A chorus of summer insects hums faintly in the distance, their buzzing constant but somehow soothing, like the background music of a still life. You open the wooden gate and step inside. The paper screens rustle as the wind threads through the open corridors. It's warm now, warmer than before, but the interior of your home remains cool and dark, preserved by thick walls and shaded eaves. You remove your sandals, step onto the tatami, and breathe in deeply. The scent is familiar, a mixture of cedar, tea, and a faint trace of smoke from the hearth. The rooms remain clean and quiet, still humming with the intention you set earlier during your morning routines. Your tray from breakfast is long gone, cleaned and stored, the bowls wiped dry and placed carefully back into their shelves, but somehow it still feels present. There is a cushion waiting for you in the corner of the room, beside a small pot of green tea. It's been left for you by a household attendant, perhaps sensing you would return at this hour. You sit, cross-legged, and pour yourself a cup. The steam curls upward lazily, catching the sunlight. You lift the cup, inhale, and sip. And here, in this silence, you feel something unusual. You are not hungry. In a world saturated by snacks, fast food, and second breakfasts, this absence of hunger might feel strange. But to you, trained by custom and culture, it feels perfectly normal. In fact, it feels right. Because unlike in modern schedules where lunch cuts the day into two clean halves, in the life of a samurai, there often was no lunch. You might eat again at sundown when the light softens and the day's obligations fade. But now, this middle hour is reserved for something far more subtle. Restraint. And not restraint as punishment. Not deprivation. But as deliberate harmony. This is where the philosophy of Harahachi-bu begins to unfold. Harahachi-bu, or eat until you are 8 parts full, is more than a rule. It's a mindset. A principle that governs not just how much you eat, but how you live. It reminds you to stop before excess, to leave space, to trust your body to continue without being overloaded, to seek balance instead of fullness. Samurai did not eat to reward themselves. They did not graze absent-mindedly throughout the day. Their meals were precise, purposeful, seasonal, and portioned to sustain, not to sedate. Breakfast, while modest in appearance, was carefully constructed to provide the right mixture of energy, clarity, and calm. Rice for slow-releasing energy, miso for warmth and digestion, fish for strength, pickles for hydration and brightness, tofu for steady protein, and tea to bind it all together. You think back to your breakfast now. You didn't rush through it. Each bite served a purpose. Each dish met a need. And now, as you sit here sipping green tea, your body reflects that harmony. Historians still debate whether skipping lunch was common practice among all samurai, or simply a habit among ascetic schools. Some scrolls recommend fasting for clarity. Others treat the noon hour as an opportunity for meditation, reflection, or quiet study. What's clear, though, is that the samurai didn't measure productivity in calories burned or hours worked. They measured it in how centered they remained throughout the day. A curious belief among certain Edo period fencing schools claimed that overeating before noon dulled the senses for the entire afternoon. A student who trained after a heavy midday meal would move slower, react poorly, and forget their forms. One treatise on swordsmanship even cautioned, "Beware the man who eats to sleep. He cannot read the wind." So instead of lunch, you choose presence. You rise and move toward the back of the house, where the engawa, the wooden hallway that faces the garden, welcomes you with warmth underfoot. You step outside. The garden greets you like an old companion, raked gravel in gentle curves, stone lanterns catching sunlight, a tiny frog perched motionless beside the mossy basin. This, too, is nourishment. You sit again, this time facing the trees. The tea is still warm in your cup. A cicada clicks somewhere nearby. The breeze brushes your sleeve and reminds you that time is passing, but your body does not clamour for more. It isn't asking for extra rice or second helpings. It has what it needs. That's what Harahachi-bu teaches. To live with intention and contentment, not constant chasing. To recognise when enough truly is enough. You stretch your legs slowly, your back is straight. Your gaze softens as you watch two sparrows dart between the eaves. The world is not in a hurry, and neither are you. You're not waiting for a bell to ring, or for a scheduled lunch break. You're simply here, within the moment, uninterrupted by the need to feed. And it's in this stillness that your breakfast begins to feel more powerful, not just because of what it gave you, but because of what it allows you to go without. You recall the delicate balance of your miso soup, the clear warmth, the way it settled your stomach without dulling your senses. You remember the pickles, the tart, crisp snap that pulled your tongue awake, the grilled fish, simple and unadorned, but rich with smokiness. The tofu, almost silent in flavour but deeply satisfying in feel. These were not random items. They were carefully chosen tools, each playing a role in shaping your entire day. Even now their echo moves through your limbs quiet and steady. In a modern world, this might be where you reach for a snack, a sweet, a caffeine jolt, a handful of something salty. But here, in this quiet hour, you reach for patience. You pour another cup of tea. In a corner of the veranda lies a short scroll, a poem, left perhaps as reading for the midday hour. You unroll it with care. The calligraphy is elegant, the ink slightly faded. The verse reads, "Eat what you need, not what you crave. Let the emptiness be part of the strength." You smile faintly. That's the lesson. The samurai didn't fear hunger, they respected it. They listened to their bodies the way they listen to wind or silence or the breathing of an opponent before a match. Hunger wasn't an emergency. It was a signal, one you didn't always have to answer immediately. You set the scroll aside and close your eyes for a moment. You feel your heart beating, not fast, not slow. You feel your breath move in and out. You feel your stomach, not empty, not full, just calm. You'll eat again tonight, of course. Perhaps rice and soup again, maybe simmered vegetables or a savoury custard, maybe even a small bite of sweet bean paste for dessert. But now, in this moment, your body is not asking, it's simply being. And that might be the truest definition of nourishment there is. The hour drifts past noon, and the sun begins its slow descent, though it still stands high in the pale sky. The cicadas persist, their chant unbroken, a rhythm you now barely notice, until it stops, and silence feels loud. You rise from the veranda, brush your robe smooth, and move back inside with the same deliberateness that's defined your entire day. There are no alarms, no notifications, no ticking clocks, just the quiet current of a samurai's schedule, shaped by the unspoken agreement between time, duty, and self. Today, you have a visitor. Word came earlier that a guest from Kyoto, a monk and former court advisor, would be passing through your region. A respected elder with a fondness for quiet conversation and delicate cuisine. He once served a lord whose calligraphy was prized across provinces, and now, in his twilight years, he walks the country, staying in homes like yours to share old stories and a few remembered tastes. And so you prepare, not with spectacle, but with hospitality woven through subtlety. You kneel in the kitchen, a small room tucked behind sliding doors, where the hearth still holds the heat from the morning's fire. You've asked for no grand feast, just a bowl of rice, a small dish of nimono, simmered vegetables, and a side of tofu topped with grated daikon and a drizzle of soy sauce. A sliver of pickled plum is added for colour, not just for flavour. This isn't a banquet. It's a conversation, served on a tray. The idea of entertaining a guest during the midday hours might seem contradictory, especially after all this talk of restraint. But the point of hara hachibu isn't strictness, it's balance. When a guest arrives, you serve, but you don't indulge. You offer food in proportion to the moment, not the appetite. Historians often overlook these quiet visits in samurai households, the times when lords, poets and monks would stop not at castles but at modest homes. Here, politics didn't dominate. Instead, it was about philosophy, poetry, calligraphy, and always food. You carry the tray to the zashiki, the guest room, where the elder has already removed his sandals and is admiring the scroll hanging in your tokonoma, a sumi-e ink painting of a crane mid-flight. He smiles when you enter. You bow, he bows deeper. You set the tray down between you both and pour tea. The monk speaks first, not of emperors or policies, but of rice. "Did you know," he says with a thin smile, "that in Kyoto rice was once measured by its scent alone? The best merchants wouldn't even taste it until they had inhaled 3 full breaths." He chuckles lightly. A foolish habit, perhaps, but those who practiced it swore it never failed them. You lift your bowl and inhale. Your rice smells faintly sweet, clean, with just a whisper of toasted grain. You nod. There's a sacredness in shared simplicity. You don't need lacquered platters or exotic spices to host a man of wisdom, just freshness, care and restraint. He chews slowly. The tofu melts on his tongue, and he nods again. "You chose well," he murmurs. "Nothing interrupts the mind." That's the goal. When food is too salty, the tongue wins. Too fatty, and the stomach becomes king. Too sweet, and the brain stumbles in pleasure. But this meal, the rice, the tofu, the pickles, it invites the soul to stay present. You eat together without rush. The conversation flows like a stream, shallow in some places, deep in others. He shares a poem written by a young court noble. One line praises plum blossoms blooming in snow, another likens tofu to the moon. You respond with a verse of your own, hastily composed but respectful in tone. The miso cooled, but in my chest, warmth lingers still. He chuckles and claps once. Not because your poem was exceptional, but because it was honest. In the samurai world, this kind of exchange wasn't uncommon. Poetry, food, philosophy, they were not separate from swordsmanship. They were considered part of a whole. A warrior had to feed more than the body. He had to feed the spirit. The elder finishes his rice and wipes the corners of his mouth with the cloth provided. He leans back slightly, sighs contentedly and says, "You did not feed me much, young one, but you've made me full." It's the highest compliment you'll receive all week. The dishes are cleared. A servant takes them quietly to be rinsed and dried. The monk stays a while longer, watching the shadows shift across the wall. Before leaving, he writes a single word with your ink and brush on a spare piece of rice paper: Shizuka. Quiet. He bows and is gone. You sit for a moment in the now empty room, thinking of the word he left behind. Quiet. That's what today has been. Not empty, not slow, just quiet, deliberate, complete. And as you reflect on the meal you just shared, you realize something. The power of a samurai breakfast didn't stop at your own body. It extended through hospitality, through how you served others, not just food, but attention, presence, calm. Even in welcoming a guest, even in offering food beyond your own needs, you remained within the bounds of harahachibu. You didn't overserve to impress. You didn't overspeak to entertain. You simply shared the quiet rhythm that had carried you since dawn. And in that rhythm, the guest found nourishment too. That is the deeper purpose of these meals. Not only to sustain warriors in battle, but to cultivate clarity in conversation, respect in sharing, and humility in hosting. You clean the inkstone, rinse the cup, return the cushion to its place. The house is silent again, but it doesn't feel lonely. It feels honest. And for the first time all day, you understand that the samurai breakfast was never just about what you ate. It was about what it allowed you to offer others in its wake. Stillness, warmth, and just enough. The guest is gone. The tray is empty. The scroll with the word Shizuka, quiet, remains gently pinned in the corner of the guest room, fluttering slightly with the afternoon breeze. You leave it there, not as decoration, but as a reminder. A memento of restraint, of presence, of the meal that spoke without raising its voice. You move back to the kitchen now, drawn by the rhythm of the day, not by hunger. The fire has died down. The kettle hums gently, keeping water just below a simmer. A handful of dishes are stacked in the basin, already rinsed, and nearby, resting in a bamboo tray, are ingredients being sun-dried for tomorrow's breakfast. Daikon slices, pale and translucent, and a small batch of mushrooms laid out like tiny umbrellas drying in the sun. You inspect them carefully, not to control, but to understand. This too is part of the samurai meal, preparation. The food that will sustain you tomorrow doesn't begin when the sun rises. It begins now in the quiet hours with small acts of care. And those small acts, they're everywhere. A servant washes rice for the evening meal, rubbing each grain gently, then rinsing again and again until the water runs nearly clear. Another brushes down the clay floor near the stove. A third trims stems from a bunch of leafy greens, humming under his breath. No one is rushing. No one is idle. The house breathes. You breathe with it. In the corner, a pot of barley tea simmers. You pour a cup and return to the veranda. This is the hour of the odd additions, when memories stir of stranger meals, of leaner times, of regional quirks passed down through generations. Because as refined as the samurai breakfast appears now, its history is one of adaptation. Not every morning brought grilled fish and perfect tofu. Sometimes it brought locusts. Yes, crisped, salted, and sautéed in sesame oil. In some mountainous provinces they were a source of protein when other supplies dwindled. Rich in texture, surprisingly nutty in flavour, and shelf-stable for weeks, they weren't considered lowly. They were necessary. Historians still debate whether high-ranking samurai ever ate insects, or whether such things were reserved for foot soldiers and rural families, but several scrolls reference seasoned sky prawns served with pickled mustard greens, likely a poetic name for grasshoppers, and katakuriko dusted beetle larvae, served in extreme winter when rations were low. And what of river sludge? Not the sludge itself, of course, but the sediment collected from drying riverbeds, where wild water chestnuts and lotus roots could be dug free, washed and added to morning porridge. These weren't delicacies, they were survival. Ground into gruel with bits of millet or buckwheat, they created a mushy grey bowl that kept bellies warm on cold days. You sip your tea and smile faintly, imagining it. A bowl of grey root porridge, a handful of roasted bugs, and a cup of miso thinned with too much water. Not elegant, not Instagram-worthy, but honest. And still, it would be arranged with care. The bowl centred, the pickles, if available, neatly placed, the tea poured without spills. Because presentation wasn't about showing off, it was about honouring the act of eating. Even in hardship, the samurai sought to maintain dignity at the table. You think, too, of the rare days when meals were unexpectedly extravagant. Maybe a shipment of bonito flakes arrived early, and the miso broth danced with smokiness. Or a visiting merchant gifted a handful of candied chestnuts, and they were shaved delicately over rice for a touch of luxury. Or perhaps a festival morning allowed for a sweet rice cake, gently grilled until golden, served beside the standard fare. These moments were not common, but they were treasured, not because they overwhelmed the senses, but because they reminded the eater, joy can live beside simplicity. A fringe belief among some culinary monks suggested that the rarer the flavour, the softer the conversation that followed. One record notes a samurai who, after tasting pickled burdock for the first time, sat for 20 minutes in silence, then composed a poem comparing its bitterness to the grief of lost honour. Whether true or not, the idea stands. Food didn't just fill the stomach, it tugged at the spirit. You look again at the drying daikon, at the rice steaming in a pot nearby. These humble things, they carry memories of lean winters, of generous summers, of guests who smiled over broth, and children who stole pickles before they reached the tray. You're reminded of your own first bowl of miso, too salty, too hot, yet unforgettable. Or the time you cracked open a pickled plum and found it held a single pine needle, tucked there by accident or by some long-forgotten ritual. You rise and make your way to the storage room. Here, on low wooden shelves, sit the ingredients of the coming week. Not labelled by brand or expiration date, but by season. Dried beans in one basket, dried kelp sheets in another, a jar of fermented soybean paste, sealed with waxed paper and twine, and above it, hanging from a hook, a bundle of smoked fish, hard, dry, and ready to be shaved thin for soup. Nothing here is flashy, nothing here is wasteful. The samurai breakfast did not require abundance. It required awareness. Awareness of what the land offered, of what the body needed, of what the day demanded. You run your fingers along a bamboo scoop. It's been worn smooth by years of measuring rice. You use it tomorrow, like every day, with the same care you give to your sword. Because in this house, food is not just sustenance. It's structure. It's how the day begins and ends. You return to the veranda once more, cup in hand. The shadows stretch a little longer now. The wind feels different, cooler, as if inviting you to consider the evening ahead. You'll eat again soon, but not yet. For now, your belly is steady. Your thoughts are calm. And somewhere in your memory, a strange breakfast lives on. One with bugs, roots and grey porridge. And still, it left you whole. The light begins to soften now, spilling golden strands through the garden, streaking across the wooden veranda and catching the fine dust that hovers in the air. Everything feels slower, more forgiving. The shadows have stretched their limbs, crawling across the stones, gently announcing the approach of evening. In a samurai household, this hour is not a time of climax or intensity. It's a slow unravelling of the day's tension. You've spent your hours in movement, in silence, in mindful labour. Now the quiet seeps in through the cracks of your home like steam curling from a teacup. You move gently, without urgency. The weight of the day doesn't press you down, it holds you. And here, in the mellow hush of the late afternoon, you begin what may be the most underestimated part of your entire day, the bath ritual. It isn't indulgent, it isn't luxurious, it's necessary. The body, which you have so carefully fueled, trained and restrained, now needs release. You walk through the back corridor of your home, wooden floorboards cool beneath your feet. You pass the kitchen, where evening preparations are just beginning, the sound of water being poured into a pot, the quiet chop of a daikon sliced clean. The air carries hints of miso and charcoal. You don't linger. Outside, the bathhouse waits. It's a humble structure of dark wood, just a few paces beyond the veranda, with a low-tiled roof and a cloud of faint steam rising like breath into the sky. You step inside. The scent is earthy. Pine wood, ash, the faint tang of water heated slowly over fire. You undress. Not hurriedly, but with the same reverence you give to untying your sword belt or folding your kimono in the morning. You sit on a low wooden stool, scoop warm water from a cedar bucket, and pour it over your shoulders. It's not shocking. It's not bracing. It's welcoming. You cleanse yourself with a rough cloth and then step into the bath, a rectangular tub deep and still. The water rises to your chest. The heat doesn't burn. It seeps into you. And for the first time all day, you allow your body to simply float. This is where it all converges. The food you ate that morning, the muscle you worked during kata, the clarity you found during writing, the restraint you practiced when hunger whispered in the hours between. Now, in this water, you feel light. There's a saying from the Edo period: a man who soaks well sleeps well, and a man who sleeps well dreams clean. The idea wasn't about luxury, it was about balance. Clean body, clear head, soft breath. You close your eyes, steam collects on your lashes. The cicadas have grown quieter now, or perhaps your thoughts have. The water presses gently against you like a second skin. You don't think about tomorrow, you don't review the day, you just float, still and silent, in a wooden box of warmth that holds you like the space between heartbeats. Historians often describe samurai as stoic, stern, unsentimental. But moments like these, quiet, gentle, unspoken, reveal a different truth. The warrior did not avoid peace. He pursued it, cultivated it, guarded it with the same discipline he brought to the battlefield. And here in the bath, he found it. Some fringe scrolls from rural provinces suggest that certain samurai would soak while reciting poetry. Not aloud, but silently. Each breath would carry a syllable, each sigh a line. You try it now, though no poem comes. Only the hum of warmth and the memory of tofu, rice, pickles, still tucked somewhere beneath your ribs. You soak until your skin puckers gently and the heat becomes part of your heartbeat. Then, just as slowly as you entered, you rise. You dry off with a cloth that smells faintly of sun and cedar. You dress in fresh robes, soft, loose, light. You comb your hair, not for vanity but for respect. The body has carried you this far. It deserves kindness. You return to the house. Evening has begun to settle in fully now. The shoji screens glow with the last light of day. Lamps are being lit one by one, soft orange orbs that push gently against the dusk. You pass by the kitchen again. The aroma is richer now, earthier. There's something simmering, maybe mushrooms and soy. A pot of rice clicks softly as it finishes steaming. A single eggplant rests on a wooden tray, sliced and brushed with miso, ready for the fire. It's not extravagant. It's enough. You smile. Because this is the rhythm. You didn't rush to eat earlier, you won't rush now. The body you prepared with breakfast has carried you calmly to this hour. The bath softened your edges. Now dinner, quiet and warm, will bring the day to a close. But you're not eating just yet. First, tea. You return to the veranda with a small pot of roasted barley tea. The bitterness is gentle, toasty. You sip it slowly, watching the shadows slip over the stone lantern in your garden. The sky, once pale, deepens into lavender. A breeze rustles the bamboo, and for a few minutes, everything feels suspended, balanced. And as you sit there, you reflect on something strange. The energy you feel right now, it didn't come from a midday meal, a snack, a sugary drink, or a moment of indulgence. It came from that breakfast, from its restraint, from its clarity, from the way it asked you to trust your body to know the difference between desire and need. You remember the first bite of rice still hot from the pot, the way your miso soothed your belly, the fish soft and salty, the tofu subtle and strong, the pickles bright and bracing. That meal didn't just start your day, it shaped it. You take another sip of tea and listen. Somewhere beyond your wall, a neighbour plays a flute, a simple melody, rising and falling like breath. It doesn't call for attention, it simply exists, like steam rising from a bowl or rice cooling in a tray. And in that moment you understand something that's hard to explain. This wasn't just a bath, or tea, or the time before dinner. It was a continuation of discipline, of stillness, of that first perfect tray of food. You bow your head, not to anyone, not to anything, just to the quiet, to the rhythm, to the day, and you sit in the soft dark with tea in hand at peace. Evening has arrived with a kind of hush that doesn't announce itself. It simply settles, like mist across a field. Your household has grown dim, not dark. The lanterns burn low, casting soft amber puddles of light on the floor. Outside, the sky deepens into a velvet blue, and the rhythmic chirping of crickets replaces the buzzing cicadas of earlier. The heat of the day has lifted, replaced by a breeze that smells faintly of river water and pine needles. You step lightly through the corridor, your bare feet brushing against the tatami mats, your robe softened from the bath. There's no rush in your movements. The day has done its work on you, shaped you through discipline, sustained you through balance, and now it releases you. The last meal of the day awaits. You arrive at the dining space and kneel once more before a low tray, carefully prepared. There is no surprise here. The contents are simple, seasonal, familiar. A bowl of warm rice, fresh and tender. A miso soup, this time deepened by longer fermentation. And maybe a hint of kombu. A few slices of pickled daikon, curled gently in their dish. A small square of silken tofu topped with grated ginger and a single green onion sliver. Beside it, a dish of simmered kabocha, Japanese pumpkin, rich and orange, sweetened ever so slightly with mirin. A modest helping of grilled greens, likely komatsuna or spinach, dusted with sesame. And finally, your cup of roasted barley tea, nestled off to the side. You bow, not to anyone watching, but to the food itself, to the hands that prepared it, to the day that brought you here. Then you begin. Each bite is slow, not just because you're tired, but because you've trained yourself to eat this way, slowly, quietly, without interruption. There is no conversation, no entertainment, no mental multitasking. The focus is on flavour, texture, gratitude. Historians still debate whether the structure of samurai meals, especially dinners, was enforced by clan rule or simply inherited through generations of cultural shaping. In many domains, meal standards were recorded meticulously. Certain clans required specific table placements, regulated the types of pickles allowed based on season, or dictated acceptable miso varieties for evening consumption. Some of these records read like law codes, others like poetry. But what unites them all is this: intentionality. The samurai meal was never meant to impress. It was meant to ground. This dinner is softer than breakfast, both in flavour and in emotional tone. Where breakfast was energy and readiness, dinner is comfort and resolution. Each bite of rice carries the warmth of completion. The miso coats your tongue like a lullaby. The tofu dissolves with a quiet dignity, offering little resistance, only nourishment. You reach for the simmered kabocha. The sweetness hits you, not like a candy, but like a memory of autumn, of festival lanterns swinging from bamboo poles, of hot soup on cold evenings and the crunch of dried leaves beneath wooden sandals. There's no need for dessert. This is it. Some fringe beliefs held that the last thing eaten at night influenced one's dreams, that if your final taste was bitterness, you might confront old regrets in your sleep. If sweetness, then ease. If spice, then restlessness. You don't know if that's true, but tonight's flavours are mellow, round and soft. You imagine your dreams will be too. You sip the barley tea, its roastiness anchoring your stomach. The grains, once hard and dry, have given their essence to the water. It's not strong. It doesn't try to impress. It simply is. That too is the theme of this day. You didn't strive. You didn't chase. You followed the rhythm set by your breakfast and trusted that one act of harmony would carry you forward. And now, as you set your chopsticks down across the empty bowl, you feel no urge for more. You're not stuffed. You're not deprived. You're balanced. The term harahachi-bu comes back again, not just in your stomach, but in your spirit. You didn't overconsume. You didn't underfeed. You lived the day exactly 80% full, saving space not for more food, but for stillness. As the tray is quietly cleared, you rise and step outside once more onto the darkened veranda. The night is cooler now. Crickets sing in the garden. The moon is high, casting pale light on the curved tiles of your roof. Somewhere far off, you hear the sound of a show. A reed instrument playing a lingering note that sounds like the breath of the wind itself. You sit with your tea in hand, sip, breathe. And in this silence, you begin to feel the echoes of the day settle into your bones. Not just the physical tasks, but the choices. The decision to wake early, to eat slowly, to move deliberately, to listen, to wait, to savour. All of it shaped by the very first tray you received at dawn, the rice that sustained you, the tofu that centred you, the miso that warmed your thoughts, the pickles that sharpened your focus. You didn't just eat that meal, you lived by it. And now, as the day closes, that same discipline leads you gently to rest. You place your teacup down and lean slightly back, feeling the cool wood beneath your hands. The lanterns flicker, your robe shifts softly in the breeze, and you wonder, what if every day could feel like this? Not exciting, not busy, just aligned. The answer isn't in doing more, it's in doing less, with care, eating less, with purpose, speaking less, with meaning, being just full enough. You stand, stretch slowly and prepare for bed, not with urgency but with reverence. And as you walk inside for the final time tonight, your body humming quietly with satisfaction, you realise you haven't just eaten well today, you've lived well. The evening has deepened, and your house, like your body, has begun to settle. The light from the lanterns is no longer something you move by, it's something you feel. Soft, flickering, warm. Your footsteps are slower now, not from exhaustion but from intention. The floor beneath you creaks softly, the way it always has, the wood bending just enough to remind you that everything is still in its place. You walk through the corridor, the night air sneaking in through cracks in the wall, cool against your skin. You aren't reaching for anything, you aren't preparing anything grand. You're simply easing into the last act of the day. There's no rush. The rhythm has already been written. From the moment you open your eyes and touched your first bowl of rice, this day has followed the logic of simplicity. And now, as it closes, it returns to the beginning. You enter the kitchen one final time, not to cook, but to store, to care for what remains. Here is where the day whispers its final requests, not with clangs or clamour, but with the quiet presence of leftovers, a concept that in many modern homes might suggest neglect or waste. But here, in this place, leftovers are not afterthoughts, they are continuations. You kneel beside the low counter. The scent of dinner still lingers faintly. Roasted miso, steamed greens, the comfort of barley tea. The hearth is now a pit of cooling ash. The kettle beside it has gone silent, but in a lacquered container rests what remains of your evening rice, still slightly warm, blanketed by a bamboo lid. You lift it gently. The rice has held its softness. No one rushed through it earlier. No one scraped the bottom of the pot. It was measured and served with the same care that it will now be preserved. You fluff it with the rice paddle, letting the grains breathe. Then you transfer it into a cloth-wrapped box designed to keep it until morning. Beside it, a small dish holds 2 pickled plums untouched from dinner. A square of tofu remains, half submerged in its soy marinade, and a few slivers of simmered pumpkin rest in their lacquer bowl, their colour deep and golden even in the low light. You don't discard these. You don't call them scraps. You cover each dish, one by one, tying the cloth lids like small gifts to your future self. Because tomorrow will come, and these humble remnants will become breakfast, or a light side to tea, or a single bite between tasks. And when they do, they will carry with them the memory of today. Historians often overlook this nightly ritual. Samurai are remembered for war, for poetry, for their codes and armour. But few scrolls dwell on how they packed away rice, or cooled miso soup to save for morning, or reused bits of pickles until they vanished into vinegar-soaked silence. Yet these moments, these small closures, form the texture of everyday life. A fringe theory among Edo period philosophers claimed that how one handled what remained on the tray was more revealing than how one approached the feast, that a warrior's discipline could be measured not by how much he ate, but by how he finished. You look down at your hands, now tying the last cloth around a pickled radish bowl. Your fingers are slow, steady. Not because you're being cautious, but because this is what the day deserves. Nothing wasted, nothing rushed. You place the containers into a corner shelf where the air is coolest. No refrigeration, just knowledge of your house, the way air moves, where shadows fall deepest after dusk. Then you wash the wooden rice paddle with warm water, dry it, and set it back in its box. You clean the counter, You wipe the empty bowls, not because anyone will inspect them, but because cleaning is a kind of gratitude. This moment, here in the quiet kitchen, is when the rhythm of the day completes its final measure. You aren't cooking anymore, you aren't eating, you're simply finishing. You pour yourself a small cup of roasted barley tea from the pot on the back burner, still warm enough to comfort, cool enough to sip slowly. You cradle it in both hands as you walk out to the veranda for the last time today. The air is cool now and clear. The moon hangs above the pines like a silver coin pinned to black silk. The shadows in the garden have softened. Everything outside your home looks like it's resting, even the gravel path, its perfect curves traced earlier by your servant still undisturbed. You sit with your tea and let the steam rise up to kiss your face. And you think, really think, about what it meant to eat this way, to eat deliberately, twice, and only twice, to never fill yourself completely, yet never feel hunger clawing at the edges of your concentration, to walk through a day without chasing food, without battling cravings, without collapsing at night from the crash of sugar or excess, to eat not because the clock commanded it, but because your body welcomed it. This is Harahachi-bu. It lives not only in the size of your portion, but in the shape of your thoughts. You remember the rice from breakfast, the clean, neutral comfort, the salt-sparked plum, the gentle tofu, all arranged just so and eaten with attention. You remember the absence of lunch, not as deprivation, but as freedom. You remember the miso at dinner, richer, grounding, the simmered kabocha, the barley tea, all of it now finished, yet still with you. You sip again, and you realise that the satisfaction you feel right now, that steady hum behind your ribs, isn't the satisfaction of having eaten everything you could. It's the satisfaction of having eaten exactly what you needed. No more, no less. You rise and step back inside. In the far room, your sleeping mat has been unrolled. The robe you will wear tomorrow hangs neatly on its peg. Your brush and inkstone are cleaned and stored. The scroll from earlier, the one where you wrote your lines after dinner, rests beside your futon. You glance at the ink strokes, already dry. I began with rice, and I end with stillness. A smile. It's true. You change into your night robe, fold your day clothing into a cloth bundle, and place it at the foot of your mat. No clutter, no loose ends. Then you lie down, pulling the blanket over your chest. The futon is thin but soft. The pillow, small but firm. Your hands rest on your stomach, which is neither empty nor heavy, just at peace. You close your eyes. The house makes its final sounds. A settling beam, the whisper of wind through the eaves, a single pop from the cooling hearth. Nothing demands your attention anymore, and in the stillness, your mind is quiet too. No hunger, no regrets, no forgotten tasks. Because when you began the day with intention, when you ate with mindfulness, moved with patience, and closed every small chapter with care, you earned this moment not through force, but through rhythm. And that's how tomorrow will begin again. With whatever's left in those bowls, with rice saved, with a body rested, with a spirit uncluttered. Sleep is close now. The room is dark, save for a faint ribbon of moonlight that spills in through the paper screen. It glides softly across the floor and rests near your futon, as though even the moon knows this house is winding down. Your breath is steady, your hands lie still, folded lightly over your blanket. The world beyond your walls is silent, save for a breeze that stirs the bamboo outside, and the occasional sigh of wood as it settles into its night posture. But your mind hasn't quite closed its shutters. Not yet. You're floating in that quiet space between wakefulness and sleep, where the thoughts move slower, their edges softened, and what comes to you now, of all things, is breakfast. Not just the one you ate this morning, but the very idea of breakfast. What it meant to begin your day with so little. Just rice, miso, tofu, pickles, and how that small tray shaped everything that followed. You see it now like a scene from a play. The bowl of rice, its steam curling like a flag raised gently to start the day. The miso, quiet and warm, wrapping your insides like a robe. The pickles, sharp and clean, waking your senses just enough. It wasn't flashy. It didn't need to be. Because what it gave you was clarity. That breakfast taught you what to ignore, what to let go, and what to carry forward. You weren't pulled into chaos. You weren't distracted by cravings. You were guided. Historians sometimes call it the samurai aesthetic, that balance of form and function, of simplicity and strength. But here, lying on your futon with a belly that knows contentment, you understand it not as an aesthetic but as a rhythm, a philosophy that isn't worn like armour but lived like breath. You turn slightly, the futon rustling beneath you, and feel your muscles release the final bit of tension. Your legs, which carried you all day, your shoulders, which held your sword and your posture, your hands, which wrote, served, practiced, and folded. They all return now to neutral. Nothing aches, nothing lingers, because every part of you was nourished just enough, never too much. You think back to the monk who visited midday, and how he smiled after his first bite of tofu, how he said, "Nothing interrupts the mind." You understand that now more deeply than ever, because your own mind is no longer jostling with interruptions. You don't feel full, you feel finished. The tea you drank an hour ago still warms your chest like an ember. The sounds of the day, footsteps, chopping boards, temple bells, wind through trees, they have all faded into a single tone, a hum, a lull, and the rhythm that began with the clink of chopsticks against a porcelain bowl has played out, measure by measure, across everything you've done. Even your sleep is part of that rhythm. Tomorrow will come. The morning light will return, casting gold through the shoji. Your rice will be warmed again, maybe turned into ochazuke with the barley tea you saved. The tofu will be sliced into thinner pieces this time, perhaps pan-grilled until its edges crisp. The pickles will be the same, sharp, familiar, grounding, and the tray will look like it always does. But it will feel new, because you will carry today's calm into that first bite. You shift once more. Your eyes are closed now, but not in force. They've closed the way a book closes, not to shut the story, but to hold it for later. The lanterns are out. The fire is long gone. The air is still. There's a phrase sometimes whispered in tea houses at the end of a peaceful ceremony. That was enough. You whisper it to yourself now, not aloud, not even in words, but in the rhythm of your breath, in the stillness of your body. That was enough, and tomorrow will be too. And now, as your breath settles into an even rhythm, as your limbs melt into the futon beneath you, let the last threads of the day loosen and fall away. You've walked gently through a world of care, where rice was not rushed, where tea was sipped slowly, where pickles had meaning, and tofu held wisdom in its stillness. Let the detail soften now. Let the garden fade to mist. Let the flickering lanterns dim in your memory. The wooden floorboards lose their creak. The kitchen return to stillness. You are safe here. You are not late. You are not behind. There is no task you've forgotten, no message left unread, no bite you should have taken. The samurai did not end their day with fanfare. They ended it like this, with intention, with stillness, with a body that asked for nothing because it had been listened to all along. Let your thoughts slow their pace. Let them stretch out like mist over water. If one rises, watch it float by. You don't need to hold it. Breathe in once, as if taking in the scent of barley tea. Exhale slowly, like the steam rising from a bowl of miso. You're full in the way that matters, not with food, but with calm, not with sound, but with silence. And when morning returns, so will your rhythm. But for now, drift. The tray has been cleared, the day has been lived, and the story is at rest. End of story. Sweet dreams.